noon. So if you're interested in hearing the artist's point of view, talk about their work, their methods, what they think of the show, it really kind of varies from talk to talk. I suggest you come on Saturdays at noon. Our next talk will be next Saturday, where Peter Kiefer, who's a local artist, will be talking about his work as well. And we're really fortunate that we can get so many local artists to come in and talk about their work, such as our next artist, Amy Jane, who grew up in Missoula, a lifelong Missoulian, right? And yes. She's going to talk about her work, and please ask any questions, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That you may have. She has a couple pieces in the show, and I'll let her take it from there.
Cool, thanks. What do you want to know?
So what is the title?
It's called Young Guys.
Young Guys, okay.
And it's loosely based on a photo my nephew took of a couple of his friends goofing around, as you can see.
And what inspired you to paint from this photo?
I like their faux gangster attitude, but mostly, the subject's not that important to me.
Okay.
It's really more about abstract things. That's what inspires me. You can't see it in this work, which is like a year old, but my latest stuff is a good deal more abstract. Mm-hmm. And what I really think about when I paint is abstract elements like shape and texture, and mostly light and space are what interests me in painting.
I think you can really see that in this piece because you can't really tell
where
the figures are. I guess the abstract element would be more of the background and their surroundings.
Interesting.
Yeah. So why don't you give us kind of a background on your story as an artist?
Okay.
What got you interested in art? How did you get involved?
Well, I started, arting, if you will, when I was like 4, when my mom, gave us me and my siblings, some crayons and paper, like most people, and fell in love with color, just off the bat, and all those things that still interest me, texture, form, shapes, and so on. And, at some point moved on to watercolor first, and then acrylic around age 11, I guess it was. And, I've been doing that, acrylic on canvas ever since. And pretty much taught myself how to paint. And,
so you didn't go to school at all for it?
I didn't. But I don't exist in a vacuum. I've studied painting on my own. At first in libraries, the local library in the Mansfield. You can find some amazing art books, especially at the Mansfield. Just huge tomes with full-size, practically, photos of very nice stuff. And then later, when the internet happened, because I'm old, it happened at some point, and started looking at art on the internet. So, it's kind of a history of art if you study it long enough and deeply enough.
Do you have a favorite artist?
Oh yeah, I've got lots of them. Picasso's, the most favorite, especially his late work. If you haven't looked at it, I encourage you to do so. Yes, what are you saying?
Been to Europe, you've been to the museums?
Yes, yeah, I have to admit, yeah.
So you've seen some of his work up close?
Yes.
Do you think that affected the way your style, being able to see brushstrokes in person?
It was amazing, the difference between looking at a photo and then I was just blown away. I think it was at the Pompidou, and it was finally seeing it, first of all, they're bigger than you think, because obviously photos are so small. And then this was a cubist piece. It was so moving, to see it in person. It was amazing. And, aside from Picasso, a lot of the other moderns, Bonnat, Goya, Matisse, you know, they're really influential. And the more contemporaries, David Hockney, Howard Hodgkin, Gillian Ayres, all those Brits for some reason.
And what inspires you about their work?
Well, they're all basically abstract painters. Even if, like David Hockney, he's not literally an abstract painter, but the way people think of it, he thinks abstractly. And it's about space. You know, they express space, and which in my head I think of as air, you know, and light. They all seem to be interested in that. And Picasso expresses it the most amazingly, those two things.
Space.
And air and light.
So how does that, can you talk about your interest in space and light in context to this piece in particular?
Sure. Well, the thing is, once I start painting, it sort of just becomes more intuitive, and I don't really think about it anymore. And then when I'm done, I like look at it for a while and see if there's any inconsistencies in the space and light, and then I can go back and fix stuff. And well, I like smoking people because the smoke just becomes such a cool element. And well, I wanted, you know, the hand to, you know, stick out. I've always been fascinated by, you know, the translation of three-dimensional onto a two-dimensional surface. I've never been interested in sculpture because, you know, that's it's already three-dimensional, you know, and I like the actual translation of the three-dimensional to the two-dimensional. That's you know, the cool dynamic of that. The whole, how do you create 3 dimensions in 2 dimensions? Not intellectually. I want it to be visceral. And I don't think I've completely achieved that in this, and I'm hoping like my more recent stuff maybe does more in that area.
And how does this differ from your more recent work, for those of us who haven't seen?
Well, it's less abstract, yes.
So your work right now, is it completely abstract? Do you have any
No, it's
sort of-
never going to be completely abstract in that it's not based on something.
Okay.
It's always going to be based on something specific.
And has your...
Either like real reality or a source photo of some kind. It's always going to have something to work from.
So do you have a subject matter that you tend to lean towards?
I do a lot of nude men, just because I think they're pretty, and you know, they have good forms, and not completely nude all the time, but and cats. I do a lot of cats. I do a lot of what's the other thing? Horses, landscapes sometimes.
So,
Yeah.
do you have a maybe? I know traditionally a lot of nudes and paintings have always been women. Do you have like a reasoning behind maybe going more with men rather than female figures?
Well, you know, it's almost like I feel like female nudes are a little simple. Maybe I'm too familiar with it or something because, you know, it's my own thing, but I'm not interested in complete nudity. I mean, it's not that it's, you know, it's not sexual, first of all. It is really an aesthetic interest.
Okay.
And it's really more like male nudes there's just more going on, you know, form-wise. Women, it just feels like if I've drawn women, you know, and it feels like they're just like the breasts and it's the simple, like they're very pretty forms, but they're simple. That's just me.
What I see in these images also, and just after talking about your interest in light, is that it does create a lot of shadows that you can kind of play with there. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, not in the same way as like chiaroscuro, you know, that school of, deep shadow, because to me deep shadow just obscures form, you know, more than really illuminating it.
Well, it also creates that form of 3D.
It's one form of creating that. Yeah, it's not what because I'm more about color in terms of that, not light and dark, but lit and unlit, as I call it in my head. It's like, it's really more about color than shadow. Because color, you could take the shadow away entirely and still get this feeling of three-dimensionality by just contrasting. You could have something the same light and darkness and have still a whole lot of contrast if you're taking a warm and a cool color, or a lit and an unlit color, like the full intensity and the dulled down intensity, even though it's not a matter of light and dark at that point.
So why don't at this point you kind of talk more about your methods? Could you explain your process of
Sure.
coming up with the idea of a painting through to the final product?
Sure. What attracts me in a source photo or like reality is interesting play of space and form, first of all. And then if it has good light, that's a bonus. But you can create that yourself, so you don't really need that. So you can start with a kind of an ugly photo and totally, add light to it. But the form should be interesting. And this had really good play of that. I mean, you've got a lot of movement happening with the forms. I don't pre-draw. Either I start with contours, or sometimes it's more of a color blocking sort of thing. Mostly contours. I don't know, it depends on the subject or, the forms. And then, like I said, it's mostly about color. So it's almost like you choose a palette first. And it doesn't have to be the palette that came with the source photo at all. It can be related, but it can be also completely different. But you have this palette with lit and unlit and cool and warms. So there's maximum contrast, and you always want a little white in there and a little black, at least I do. This has got all of those. Lit, unlit, cool, warm, black, white. For maximum contrast, you need all that in there to really get that. And then you just start, I just start painting, and like I said, I'll go back and edit it after I look at it a while, see if there's any inconsistencies or if you can bring something more to life.
And how long would you say that process is from when you...
Oh, it's pretty short.
Yeah, you look away, you step away from the painting and then go back?
Oh, that, yeah, well...
to make any changes, edits?
I probably look at it for on and off, not stare at it, but, have it there in my consciousness after I've finished it, maybe for a couple of hours.
And do you work on multiple pieces at once?
I don't.
Or just one at a time?
One at a time. I draw too, so I don't really consider those. I can be drawing and painting at the same time. They're kind of separate.
The other piece that you have in the show is very different. It's a different media. Can you talk about the differences you see between the drawing and the painting? Why do you do?
Yeah, it's weird. There's a definite difference because the drawing is in one color, so that's going to have to be more about texture because there's no color involved. So you have to the drawings tend to be less abstract, more playful almost than the paintings. Not sure why. It's like I have two ways of seeing that are stuck inside me, and it's been a process of trying to bring those two together all this time. you know, and I don't think I'll ever actually be able to do that. It's like there's the playful, whimsical way of looking at the world, which is really more expressionist. And then there's the abstract, and the drawing kind of takes care of that whimsical side, and the painting is really evolving towards the more abstract, but in no way is it ever going to be totally abstract in the sense that, you know, I'm not sure if Pollock had something in mind when he was painting, but it comes across as something totally from his head and not, you know, I don't know that for sure though. And it's never going to be totally from my head. At least it might be if I have a subject in there, you know, but it's always going to be something.
It's drawn from life.
Of some sort.
They say art to an artist is like a moth to light. Would you say that's the same with you, that attraction?
Yes, yeah, it totally is. For as long as I can remember, it's like an overwhelming interest, an all-consuming interest. I don't really have much of a life outside of it, that much of an interest, you know.
You said you don't spend too long on your painting, so for example, on this preview, how long would you say you spent on it?
Well, here's the thing. I'll like do a whole painting, and then I might totally cover it over and start over on the same subject. Like I can't tell you how many drawings I've done of this subject, this same source photo, and just numerous, you know, but then they're all different. So each one is like a separate mindset almost. And the actual paintings don't take very long. They're pretty spontaneous. They happen in a day, you know, 2 days tops. But I will do that subject over and over because it's just such an interesting form. And they won't look the least bit the same. And I don't always cover them over. I actually have like this, I have like sometimes I'll have like 3 paintings that are the same source photo, but you'd never know it by looking at them, that they were, for instance, I'll do like heads, you know, portraits. They're not really portraits because they never look the same. They're just subjects, 3D forms. And you will never know you'd never know they were the same person because they're like totally different every time.
Just because you're not really interested in the likeness, more of like the form.
Unless the likeness is particularly appealing in some personal way, no, it's not a portrait. I could do a portrait. I can do that. It's just not what interests me. I have done them. I've done portraits.
Well, lastly, I'm interested in your opinion or your feelings about being an artist in your daily life. Your career as an artist, your involvement in this show. Do you show often? How do you feel about being in?
It's thrilling. It's thrilling. Are you kidding? It's great. It's so cool to see your art on a wall other than your own, you know? Yeah, I don't.
Do you make art your career now, or
I'd love for it to be a career. I'd love for people to want to buy it, but that hasn't happened as yet. I'd love for that to be true. Yeah. You know, but it's such a hard business, you know, to actually do for money. And I've never been that, well, clearly, I've never been that interested in money, or I wouldn't be doing this for a living.
So it's more of a personal fulfillment.
Yeah, it's a lot of that, and very little of the other. So, so far.
How did you get into the show?
I think I sent 6 of my paintings and drawings, because that was the number you could send, and they chose 2 of them, which I was thrilled about.
Why did you decide to put your art out for this?
Don't know. Just, you know, I'd like for it to, you know, someday sell. So, and the only way that's going to happen is for people to see it, you know? And, you know, it's cool to get feedback. You know, you can't just, you know, exist in a vacuum. It's good to see what other people think. It's not going to influence me terribly much, but it's really nice. What do you think? Seriously. Thanks. I never hear.
I was wondering about the composition, like somebody just said, if how much of that is from the photo, the cropping, because I think it's an interesting.
The photo
way
was
they
quite
set
a
it
bit
up.
bigger, with a lot more background and the man's pants, men's pants, and you know.
And so I think it's interesting the way that you decided that you chose to crop it.
I wanted to crop off the pants mostly because I didn't want to deal with the color. I wanted the colors to remain pink and blue and white. So I wanted to limit the palette because I just like I like that contrast, warm and the cool.
Interesting.
This may be incorrect, but are they supposed to be gay?
Oh, they certainly could be. They're not in real life, I don't think. Do
I
they?
hate the sound.
Are you?
No, but that's okay. I mean, I don't care. There's a guy called Tom of Finland that does,
I'm familiar with Tom.
yeah, similar.
Well, you'd be familiar with anybody who draws men for a living, and I've studied a lot of people who draw men for a living. And wow, thanks, because this stuff is really good.
Yes, no, that's a compliment.
Yeah, it is.
That's not a disparaging or negative comment. We were down in Palm Springs, and there's a lot of art it's supposed to be. And that, I mean, if I had-
Gay themed art.
Yeah, I'd say if these guys were steel workers or not steel workers, I'd tend to go the second choice. That's not to say they couldn't be steel workers. That's not to say there's not gay steel workers. But
I like a lot of, some of my favorite artists are gay. A lot of the ones doing male portraits, women don't seem to do a lot of nude men. For some reason, they tend to want to do women. And, you know, I've kind of always been baffled by that, you know, a little bit. I mean, women's bodies are beautiful, but why are they not interested in doing men?
you're asking the wrong thing.
So I do look at a lot of gay art. And two of my favorite abstract or contemporary artists, you know, Howard Hodgkin and David Hockney are both gay. They don't paint a lot of men. Well, yeah, David Hockney does, that's not quite true. But he does everything, it's not just that. So,
And that's not to say it's derivative or, you know, intentionally, you know, it just, that's the thing that I can place it closest to. And
well, that's a compliment, yeah, because they know men, you know. Gay painters know male bodies a lot better than I do, probably. So, yeah, thanks.
The composition is,
Thanks. It's always good to hear. Yeah, they're sort of coming together in a triangle almost. But they're not physically touching, so, which you see a lot in gay art.
well,
Any other questions?
it takes a lot. I do steel sculpture. It takes a lot of courage. I think I heard the question before. It takes a lot of courage for an artist to put their stuff up because you do face the slings and arrows. But if no one sees, if you have a piece of art and nobody sees it, does it really exist?
Yeah, that's the thing, you know. Why not put it out there? It's always nice to hear. Even, you know, negatives, you know, at least it's somebody looking at it, you know, even if they're not positive.
Well, they're learning something then too.
Good point.
Thanks for sharing your talents.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. Thank you for showing up and listening. Holly. Cool.